when you can age out loud, when you can look in the mirror and go, oh my God, I've got barnacles, I've got wrinkles, I've got crepe skin. I'm amazing, and really embrace it. This is how I'm supposed to look. It's okay. Because every day you're told it's not okay.
It seems to be the topic of conversation lately. As me and my friends are creeping into that halfway mark, the line over 50, ageism is coming up a lot in conversations, birthdays, celebrations, dinner parties, social media memes going back and forth. We laugh at them, we cry at them, and we wonder, this is 50? What's next? But still, ageism in the working world is making it harder for people to pivot, to change jobs, to try something new. And we question love and relationships as we see marriages, divorces, deaths. What comes next? But what if we look at things differently, my friends? What if we take it from someone a little older, a little wiser, who's been around the block a few times and has dissolved the internalized ageist beliefs so we can be rock stars in the Renaissance age, right? Those Renaissance years, as she calls it. Ande Lyon, you are a 4-time founder, a former global startup mentor, serial podcaster since 2012 when not all of us were doing this thing out there, and currently the host of the popular Don't Be Caged by Your Age podcast. And let me add, you are a rock star when it comes to thriving after 65. I feel like I'm learning so much from you. And I am so excited to have you here and just share this space with you. Hi.
Thank you so much for having me, Hilary. I'm so delighted to be here. And when I turned 50, which was almost 18 years ago, folks, I remember very clearly I'd had 2 businesses then, a .com heavily backed by VC and a food business that I'd scaled in less than 2 years and was nationally and was backed by an angel investor for 6 figures. And when I turned 50, I thought, geez, this is it. Entrepreneurial days are done. It's a young person's game. I'm going to have to hang up my tiara. Well, how many decades later, practically, I've had 2 more businesses, launched another 3 podcasts, and I realized when I wrote this post for LinkedIn, Hilary, called Don't Be Caged by Your Age, and it was when I turned 66, and I held up the Route 66 sign. Those of you in the U.S., you know that Route 66 sign? I held it up and took a photo of myself, and the look on my face was really, will you still love me now that you know that I'm 66? Because I was in the startup industry, right, which tends to be a very young industry, where often they say, explain your business, as if you were telling it to your grandmother. And of course, my arm would shoot up and go, excuse me, we've been coding since the 70s. Sit down on that comment. So I noticed in the comment threads, so many people who were either really discouraged and despairing, and a lot of them pre-retirees, a lot of them in their 50s going, oh my God, what am I going to do? Because we have this belief that at 65, the clock strikes midnight, you're done. Out to the pastures, all of you. Pastures are for horses, not humans. And then I saw comments from folks who had repurposed their lived experiences. The guy who quit 30 some years in the insurance business and just started a perennial garden, and then he noticed all the bees and he said, well, I should get me some hives. Got himself some hives. And the next thing he's like, well, what am I going to do with all this honey? Well, he started a honey business. He's having the time of his life. So fast forward a few years, now I'm about to turn 68. I said, I have got to start amplifying what does thriving after 65 look and feel like. Let me interview folks who are shattering those age-related expectations of what we're supposed to look like. And folks, if you're in your 50s, you are already going to start beginning to experience the institutional ageism, where you are now considered permafrost, where for some reason there is this bias that says, oh, we're not going to invest in you anymore because you're just sliding into retirement. You don't have any more ambition left. What? Ambition is ageless. And humans need purpose to get out of bed, right? And then you've
Yeah.
got society who's constantly telling you you're no good if you've got a wrinkle. Like, cut it out already. You can't be aging. In fact, I interviewed someone recently who has a book who says, help, I can't stop aging. Really funny book, but it's very real. And people are constantly feeling terrible. And let me tell you, Hilary, when you can age out loud, when you can look in the mirror and go, oh my God, I've got barnacles, I've got wrinkles, I've got crepe skin. I'm amazing, and really embrace it. This is how I'm supposed to look. It's okay. Because every day you're told it's not okay. So you take the institutional messages about ageism, society's ageism, and you've been indoctrinating these for decades in your own body. And now you're up against your own limitations about what you can do. So that's why we have to have representation, right? Because if you see it, you can be it, to start dissolving and start celebrating aging.
I love that. I love everything you're saying. You do it with such excitement and such positivity. And this is not the age of our parents or grandparents even turning 50 or 65. There's so much stuff out there that you see on the internet where they will show a picture of somebody who is 40, 50, 60, like 30, 40 years ago. And we look at ourselves now and I'm like, God, I look pretty damn good, But it's not just about how we physically look. It's how are we creating a quality of life, not just in the now, but going forward. And you and I had this conversation before we press record about the elder planning, and just the word elder can kind of come across as being a little icky. Like, elder, that means old.
That's indoctrination, though. And it's only the U.S. and UK and Australia, basically, who has this attitude. Plenty of societies have no word for senior citizen or elder.
And I have found, just in some of the work I do, because I have started to work with people who are over the age of 65, especially just giving them tools not to fear death. They face more grief now because sometimes we lose partners when we're older. It's more likely. Mm-hmm. But how do we have this new lease on life to where, looking ahead, we don't see even 50 as, oh, I'm old. Like, how many times do we joke about that? Oh, I'm so old.
Oh my gosh.
I'm so old.
Ageism is really one of the last remaining socially acceptable prejudices out there. You see it in the cards. Everything slams aging. And let me tell you, for anybody who is under 60, ageism is a prejudice against your future self. You are slamming your future self and the capability out there. And you're absolutely right, Hilary, how they position folks who are aging. Andy McDowell was recently interviewed by this Italian journalist who said, well, how does it feel to have lost your beauty? And Andy's like, say what? My beauty comes from inside me. It comes out my eyes. It comes out my smile. What are you talking about that I've lost my, quote, beauty?
I think this is the time where, as you call it, that the Renaissance years, when the Renaissance party really starts.
Right.
Right? Maybe in your 40s and 50s, you're kind of lurking around, seeing, oh, who's going to be at that party?
Right.
And it's that period of our lives where we could start thinking of how we want to thrive and live optimally later. And we were talking about this before, like when I was, my boyfriend and I talk about where do we want to be next? And I remember when he first started approaching me about, well, the next house, I'd like it to be one level. And I'd like to always be near a really good medical facility. And I'm thinking, dude, what are you talking about? Like, I am 50 years old. I'm not thinking about that. And the more we start talking about it, especially as we have aging parents, I'm like, that actually is not a bad idea. Because if I'm living comfortably and optimally and thriving in my home, that's my respite, I'm going to be happier. If I have a facility close by where I know I can get good help, even if it's minor, I'm going to be happier and I'm going to thrive. So it's not putting off things later. And then you're SOL.
Right.
Because you're like, crap, I should have thought about this before I bought this 4-story mansion.
Absolutely.
In the middle of the woods.
And boy, there are some great conversations going on regarding living and group living and how does that work. It's just fascinating. And here's an important fact. In 2021, the World Health Organization identified retirement as almost like an epidemic. It's costing societies billions of dollars. And it's because people plan perhaps financially for retirement, but they don't plan for the fact that when you retire, what happens? You get home, you're like, oh, I've been waiting my whole life to retire. Yay, I'm going to golf and I'm going to do this. Well, after 3 months, you're bored with all of that. Where are my people? Where's my connection? And if you follow that whole blue zone, well, people think, oh, it's the environment or it's the food they're eating. No, it's the connection and the honoring of aging. And you don't want to become invisible. And so many people in your age group, Hilary, are frightened about retirement because 7 out of 10 retirees plan to keep working. They may either love what they want to do or they're getting ready to segue and do something else. There was this woman who said, I have been wanting to travel my whole life. I'm going to become a flight attendant. She's 63. She is traveling everywhere and having a blast. Plus, at her age, she knows how to shut down people rather quickly and not get all flapped out about any crazies on the plane. And she's seeing the world and she's getting paid, and it's a great, easy, flexible schedule. There are so many ways to repurpose your lived experiences. But what happens is when people get home, all of a sudden, they're invisible. They're not connected. They're treated poorly. If they do go to look for a job, it's bagging groceries at Stop and Shop or something. And they don't know what to do, and they start to decline. Their health declines. Their memory capability and recall capability declines. And it ends up costing societies billions of dollars, which is why we have to reframe this time period in our life.
I want to talk about that for a second. And I love that you brought up the Blue Zones because I've had Dan Buettner, who is the founder of the Blue Zones, on this show a number of years ago. And that whole idea of longevity is not just living into the centenary years. It's not just living past 100. It's living well. And community is a big part of that, like you mentioned. But it's also understanding what it means to, if you are going to pivot and you talk about this flight attendant, how do you approach companies in a way where they don't look at you and you instantly hear, well, you're overqualified. Well, we need a younger, a more zesty, even though they can't say that because that's age discrimination. It still happens.
The way to change policies, the way to change bias in a corporation is in court. And that's one of the beauties of AARP is that they are bringing these companies that are doing blatant ageism in their hiring practices to court. Then we also have to work on reframing. What does it mean to have an older employee? Okay? Because companies are wasting generations of talent every time they ignore someone over 50. Because again, they think you're permafrost. They think you're just going to fade off into the distance and then retire. And oftentimes it's not even about, oh, don't want to pay you your salary, right? And then the third thing is the fact that resumes. You have these things called, what are they, ATS? AST?
Automatic tracking
systems. They
systems.
scan your resume. Well, I interviewed a phenomenal woman who has a resume business because at the age of 58, her current company at the time had downsized, and she had decades of outstanding, especially in tech, behind her. Could not find a job. So she went, learned all the things about resumes, took all the courses, got all the certification, and launched a resume business, SA Resume Services. And what she does is that she gamifies your resume so that it can get past those scanning systems, because that's another huge barrier to entry. And one of my funny stories about Sandra Allison is I'm interviewing her. She's 72, We're having a great conversation. She says, well, I'm a gamer. Well, my bias kicks in and I'm thinking, what, bridge?
Right.
Bingo? And she's like
Fortnite.
And she's like, Ande, I have been gaming since we had to use punched cards for mainframes. I shoot zombies for leisure.
Oh, that's too funny.
And she's got, one eye she can't see out of one eye. She can't really walk, but she has a thriving resume business that she figured out how to help people get on boards, rising executives, people who want to stay in the C-suite in their 60s. There's so many different ways and pathways, but it is going to take time. Now, look, you're going to want to negotiate a 30-hour week. You don't want to be part of that hustle culture after the age of 60. But you can still get a lot out of someone in 25 or 30 hours.
And there are people that I've had conversations with that maybe they've had a really wonderful, productive, financially, what's the word? They've had a great career, right? And now they're pivoting. Maybe they are a stay-at-home for a while and they're like, I have a lot of experience. I want to get back into it. And they're actually okay without doing 40 hours, without even sometimes having the benefits because maybe the spouse has that.
Or
whatever
if you're
it
over
might
65, you have Medicare, you already have your supplemental covered. So
yeah, and maybe they're not even worried about making the kind of salary they were making. They're like, I just want a little purpose in my life to do what I love to do. But they've run into it's so hard to get hired because they think I'm not going to do the job. And it's like, you're right. I guess it's going to court. It's fighting the battles. It's proving that it's like going back to old times with it takes a village. We learn from our elders. It really does.
And, shows like mine with Don't Be Caged by Your Age and so many other pro-aging platforms. There's a great platform called Ageism is Never in Style. And I'm telling you, Europeans are way ahead of the game here than the U.S. in nailing this down. I interviewed a woman who she worked for Voice of America for 30 years in sub-Sahara Africa, journalist, right? And when she turned 60, she said, I want to model, I want to act, I want to do all of these things. Whew, she's knocking it out of the park.
Wow, I love hearing stories like that. I think about my heroes, my heroines, people who have really inspired me, one of which being my mom. And I sat in a huge auditorium arena about 6 or 7 years ago, right before the pandemic, actually. And I'm really glad my mom walked because she was like, maybe I'll delay it a year. My mom got her college degree, something she started 60 years prior. And just to complete it, yeah, right, the clapper. Just completing it was her task. It wasn't to go back into the workforce. And it was so amazing to see her walking in with thousands of 20-year-olds around her. Had her little mortarboard decorated. The news covered her. I mean, it was motivating and inspiring. And there are so many people doing that. But there are also people going back in their 60s and 70s, getting their law degrees and practicing and
publishing books. I mean,
right. There's no end to what we can do. And I think about where I am right now at 51, where I might be at 61 or 71. Like, I'm just getting started. So I want to learn from Renaissance rock stars like yourself. And that leads us into something I'd love to talk about is what you mentioned is the energy portfolio. Can we touch on that?
As you age, you have a deeper appreciation that you have an expiration date somewhere down the road, and that what is the best and highest use of your time. And that is the valuable currency is the time. And therefore, what level of energy do you want to give to the tasks and pursuits of dreams in your life? Have someone help you understand, where do I want to put my energy? And especially women, you can get sucked into doing some stuff, coupled with the toxic hustle culture that we especially grew up with in the 80s and the 90s and the 00s, right? And currently. Mm-hmm. It's all about living to work. And when you look at your energy portfolio, you're looking at working to live. You're taking, almost embodying that European mentality, right? And saying, okay, I want to have time for things that I love, that are hobbies, that are passions, that have nothing to do with fueling my passion, but there's a passion for something that just lights up your heart. And understanding you want a certain flow to your day so that you're not being a puppet for a puppeteer. And that's what's so hard about the toxic culture, hustle culture, is people think that they have to put in gobs of hours. And you can negotiate this with anybody you're working with. But it's really helpful if you can sit down with someone, a coach, a life coach, whatever, whomever, to help you understand, what does that look like? What does that feel like? And then be committed to that so that you don't get drained of energy. Because as you age, your body is going to have different requirements. But it's finding out, well, what does my energy portfolio look like? What do I want to put in there? And more importantly, Hilary, you mentioned this earlier, the purpose. Humans need to be on purpose. You need a reason to get out of bed. And part of that understanding your energy portfolio is, where am I putting my energy today? And how am I having that as a flow? So that we have our not to-do list, our to-be list, right?
Yes. Thank you for saying that. It's about being, not doing. We are so caught up in that. And I cannot agree with you enough on that, because when we come from that culture, that hustle culture, we think if we're not doing, we're lazy. Then we start putting these words on ourselves. We're lazy. We're not productive. We're not worthy. And that is completely the opposite.
Do you know about the NAP ministry, Hilary?
Do tell.
The NAP ministry, Tricia Hersey. Oh my gosh, just put it into your Instagram feed, folks, or Google it. Tricia realized, she's a woman of color, and she realized, especially for Black women, part of the DNA indoctrination throughout the generations was the work of a slave, slaving away all day. And so what she focuses on is rest is resistance to the hustle culture. And instead of trying to do 90 million things all day long, take a nap, take a rest, take a moment to meditate. Do you really have to do that? She has cards, she has a book. It is so fascinating and so wonderful. As a 4 times founder and being a global mentor in the startup ecosystem for 8 years, I saw the hustle culture take a toll, especially on those who are parents and founders. And it just is toxic. Toxic productivity, right? Mm-hmm. Toxic positivity. Those are all things that do not serve us. So in our energy portfolio, to sort of wrap that all up, is what are we going to put into that space and place, and be conscious, be intentional about that, so that you can actually use it as a filter. Does that fit in my energy portfolio? Nope, it doesn't. I'm going to say no to that. Woo.
Yeah. I find myself talking about currency more in a different way. And it's not necessarily financial, because currency could be time, it could be rest and repair, it could be love. Currency means so many different things. And I have to say, even this younger generation, I think, is getting it, because they might be deciding, I don't want to go to an office every day and spend 3 hours of my life on a train and miss time with my family. And I do think there were some benefits that came from the pandemic that we're realizing time is probably one of the most important currencies. It's a unit of measure, and how we're spending it, because it is the one thing that is not promised to us, is really important.
And you bring up a very important topic, which is intergenerational friendships and relationships. And what happens, I hear a lot from the boomers and Gen X, is, those lazy millennials and Gen Zs. I'm like, look, they've got different values than we all were raised with, which was to give up all our spit and everything we have inside of us to our work. And these kids watched us go off to work and have the spit sucked out of us and come home and nothing left for them. And they're like, no, that's not how we're going to live our life. So we have that. But also, yes, maybe it might be lovely to be in a 55 plus community because you don't have any screaming kids, but where are you going to find those intergenerational relationships? So when I interviewed Carrie Hannon, she had had her own business for years as a journalist when she got picked up by Yahoo Finance. And they wanted her to write for them and speak about retirement, finance, and all of that. And who was she going to be reporting to? Someone 20 years younger than her. And she first was like, I don't think so, because we're caught up again in that story about we have to be the top dog because of our age or whatever. She is having a blast working for her younger manager, right? Reporting to this woman. They're learning so much from each other. So when you get different generations in the room, it's wonderful. And I can tell you firsthand, anytime I walked into a room filled with startup founders, the 30 and younger group, they glopped onto me. Ande, you're the most fascinating person in the room. You're this, you're that. They don't see that you're old. They see your enthusiasm. They see your knowledge, your wisdom. They do not have this bias against you.
Yeah, so I can totally identify with that as a college professor who has been teaching communications journalism for over 10 years. The students love to learn from those who are in the field, like the adjuncts, not just the ones that are sitting in the offices, full-time professors. They love the adjunct professors who are out there doing. So when being more likely. So when I've been as a journalist, I'm still in that field, even though I'm doing, my work in trauma as a practitioner. The other side of HIListically Speaking is still the journalist. So when I work for big corporations and I have a producer that is guiding me as the host, as the reporter, I love that they want to learn from me. But you know what? I learn from them. I used to tell that to my students all the time. I'm like, you might be on the other side of the hiring table one day. So befriend everyone in every age group because we can learn from each other. I might have more experiences, but you've got your finger on the pulse of a new generation of this digital age more so than I ever did. I touched my first computer in college. You were probably born with one right next to you, So it's really building these relationships with every generation so that we can find ways to learn from each other,
And again, corporations need to do this. Society needs to do this. It's a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Yeah. You give new meaning to multi-talented goddess. I would look up in the dictionary multi-talented goddess, and there is Hilary.
I appreciate that.
Oh my gosh. If anybody listening or watching, can we get like a high five on that?
I want one of those.
A fist bump.
I love it. Thank you. And I think we learn from each other. When we open ourselves up to knowing that somebody has something to share. It's one of the reasons why I love adult living facilities, right? I love sitting there and listening to the stories that are shared, that are only things that I've heard about on TV or in movies. You're hearing the story firsthand from somebody. And it's a generation that I believe, especially 70 and up, where they become silenced. They're part of the silent generation. And being able to sit there and listen to their stories and hold their hand and let them know that they're heard, I think is so valuable.
Oh my gosh. And with all the guests that I'm interviewing, because folks, you have to be old enough to be on my show. It's a 60 plus show.
Hold my seat.
Those in their 70s and 80s, I kid you not, the resounding words that I hear are, this is the best time of my life. I've been waiting my whole life to have this life. So how encouraging is that, right?
Yeah, it really is. And I want to stop for a moment just to remind folks, we're talking to Ande Lyon. She is the host of the popular Don't Be Caged by Your Age podcast. That's what we keep talking about. She's referred a couple of episodes as well. And we'll put that all in the listen notes of this podcast so that you have a way of getting in touch with Ande, tuning in. Look, if you're over 65, maybe you might be a guest, but you're definitely going to resonate with this, whether you are 65 and over or under, because at some point we're going to be there, and at some point we are there, and at some point we want to know how to even live better. So it's such a great resource to have this kind of podcast out there on the platforms so that it's bringing new ears to the podverse, right? This amazing thing that we have out there. And you and I had a chance. We met actually at Podfest, right? Is that where we met? Yeah. And here we are today, joining forces in a way. We talked about the energy portfolio. I love that. We're going to add that to the notes as well.
Yeah, one thing I'd love to bring up, and I know listeners and viewers have seen this, which is the infantilizing of folks over 60. Oh, honey, can I get the, oh, dear, oh, sweet, just wait a minute. Hello? I have lived 60, 70 years. I'm a grown-ass woman or man. Don't be treating me like I'm 2 and a toddler. And that's something that's really, really important that we have to remember, is to start hearing the language in our heads, just as you've become aware of your other biases over the years, and you've been able to be more forward thinking and awoken about your communication. It is the same thing. Look at that woman or man and honor them instead of talking down to them. And same thing, one thing you can absolutely do is stop buying the Hallmark cards that make fun of being old.
Yeah, I never thought about that. We're shaming it through humor.
Absolutely. And, it's hard enough for all of us as we age and understand the human frailty and our bodies and the crepe skin and surgeries that have to happen, or you're on different meds because your body needs help in functioning. But as I heard one woman said, if forgetting things was a sign of old age, then I am younger than many teenagers in my home or folks in their early 20s. They're constantly forgetting things.
Oh my gosh. And let's talk about, even as a woman, everybody's blaming, menopause. Oh, menopause. Oh, I'm so forgetful, menopause. And I hear that all the time. And there's a lot of people out there that are in that field now, coaching in the menopause space. And that's great. Having a sisterhood and having support as we grow older is wonderful. But I also feel that is an age that we are starting to make fun of and blaming it on menopause.
And instead of empowering the symptoms, as estrogen leaves your body, it is leaving certain things behind. You can use it as a letting go process. You can use it as I am being unshackled, because, wow, when women hit their 50s, all of a sudden their level of responsibility for others has decreased in a significant way, and they can really focus on themselves. So if you can reframe the story from being a victim of menopause to, hey, just like diabetes, you're going to have to get some insulin so you can continue to be a powerful person, or you need to do something else for high blood pressure meds so you can help your heart get the blood around your body. Menopause, you figure it out. You figure out, do I need bioidenticals? Because my body, without estrogen, I'm a mess. I don't even recognize myself. Boom, get on the bioidenticals, whatever works for you. Hot flashes, use that as an empowerment instead of, again, a victim, and switch the narrative around what happens, because it perpetuates the belief that how can we trust a woman in menopause if she's going through, sure, I mean, honestly, 1 minute you're homicidal, the next minute you can be suicidal. But if you're using that as part of stepping into your greater power as a warrioress, as a person, a woman, in the world, instead of being diminished because estrogen is leaving your body.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Whether you've had children or not, there's still that moment where you just said about being the warrior. It's like, by the way, we push things out of our body in the size of a watermelon out of a size of a pea. We can deal with menopause. Don't you worry about it. We're designed. We're designed.
If you look historically, you were only valued during your reproductive years.
Yeah.
So now
Right.
I don't have to reproduce anymore. I don't have to worry about any eggs anymore. I don't have to worry about any of that. And as a woman who went through menopause at the age of 48, 20 years ago, oh my God, so freeing. And it really is perimenopause that drives you crazy. The other side of menopause for the majority of women is you get back to normal, everything's fine, and you are so much more in your power.
And there are also cultures that celebrate women in their wisdom years, in the elder part of their lives, because you're the sages. They're the ones that have lived through the births, the perimenopause, the menopause. We're talking about the red tent is the perfect example. Like if we go back to thinking about how cultures really were, women are the true essence of keeping a community together. Not to shame the men in any way.
Not
I think
at
we
all.
all have a responsibility. We all show up in our own way. It takes a village. It really takes a village, and now it takes a global village. And I think we need to realize how we can truly learn from each other. But I do want to get into, because we talked about this a little bit, the elder planning. I know we talked about it just a tish. So can we talk about what that will really mean?
It's what are you going to do with this precious life of yours? One of my favorite books, and I highly recommend it for any age, is called Don't Retire, Rewire. And so part of planning what you're going to do, and this book has the best questions, thoughtful questions to help you understand how are you going to rewire yourself for this time period, because you were wired for the last 40 years in a certain way. What is the next 30, 40 years going to look like? Given longevity is pretty much happening for many of us. And
So I see that book behind you.
yep. It's done and written by a woman, dietitian, who actually, in part of her career, was the executive editor for Working Women. And she interviewed people from, as she likes to say, from Dubai to Des Moines about how they were managing the elder years and planning. It's mostly finding out what fuels your passion, what's aligned with your personality, and can fuel your pocketbook as well. Because many of us, especially boomers, have not saved enough money for this time of life. So you
That's a
need
big
to
one.
also think about how you are going to continue to earn money. Going through the process, and a lot of times you need a coach to go through that book with you, because not all of us are really self-directed, to plan where and how, and if you do get ill, what will that look like? So on episode 18, I interviewed Deborah Greenhut. It's how, if you're going to suddenly be the caregiver because your beloved needs help, maybe had a stroke, whatever, or something happens to you and you need care. Relying on your family will not work. Or for that one person who has is local and wants to take care of the aging parent, 20 hours a week is the healthy time that you're going to want to do that. So part of the elder planning is, what are the community services around me? Who can drive me to appointments? What is the Council of Aging in my state or the government's Council of Aging? What are their services? $12 a year you can get on AARP, and you can get discounts up. I mean, for forever. I mean, from cell phones to anything, they've got the discounts for you. It's a big, powerful buying group. Figure those things out, because as much as we'd like to think our children, siblings will take care of us, at the end of the day, as Deborah said, studies show us they're just not that into you.
Ooh.
And that can be a problem. Or resentment
Yeah.
builds up because one person steps up to take care of that person.
One sibling. That is a big conversation I have been having with friends now,
Yeah.
that there's always one that is doing everything, and then you have resentment within siblings. And
yeah, what I learned,
no energy for you.
Right. And what I learned from Deborah, it doesn't matter how good you are at delegating or having those tough conversations. Let's go. Boom, boom, boom. She goes, 9 out of 10 times, they're still not going to show up. You need to know what is out there and available for you for free, or covered under your Medicare and your additional benefits. So you get the basic Medicare, but you can buy add-on insurance. And let me tell you, you can get great therapy for free. You can find geriatric support out there for a small fee or free. You need that support. You need the counseling to deal with all the things, because it can be really scary aging. It can be scary because the body is no longer able to function like it did in its 50s.
And just having support is helpful.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you have a good relationship with your family, your parents,
Or they're close by.
You feel this pull to want to do for them. I don't want to move too far, because then who's going to take them to their appointments? Somebody needs to know what medicines they're taking. I mean, I'm a product of a dad who was sick my whole life. I don't know anything other than that. My father's no longer with me, but I have a mother who's getting older. And so there's that pull to want to make sure she's okay. But when it comes down to it, I need to be okay.
Right.
My emotional well-being needs to be okay. And I think this also goes into the whole conversation about letting people who are meant to help in the health field help, because the big thing you always hear is nobody can take care of them as well as I can. It's like, actually, that is incorrect, because you are meant to be the emotional support, not the medical support.
Or the legal. Like, you're not an attorney,
Right.
you're not a financial advisor or an accountant, you're not the massage therapist. And also, so many caregivers end up dying before the person they are caring for, because they're in it for 24/7, 365. Because it's an act of love and you love that person, but you have to learn the boundaries. So check out Deborah Greenhut. She has a caregiver's guide to make sure that you take care of yourself. 20 hours a week is the magic number. You feel wonderful for doing that, but how to get the free help. And then there's another platform called Ionacare, IANACARE. This is a tech platform set up for the sudden caregiver moment, where life is doing great, and all of a sudden someone's in an accident or has a heart attack, and all of a sudden you're a caregiver full time. You're like, oh my God, I'm not prepared. And people say, how can I help you? And you're like, I have no idea. They have actually set it up so that you can easily just set up a page that says, I need this help, and they can fill out the calendars. We'll bring meals. We'll do this for you. We can drive. We can do all those things. So you don't even have to have the conversations. People can volunteer.
So I love everything that you're sharing, because these are conversations that sometimes are a little scary to have, but they need to be had.
Yes.
They need to be had before you wind up being in a predicament where you are not prepared for anything. So when you have these conversations now, you're setting yourself up for a thriving Renaissance age for you, for those you are caring for those you love. But mainly it comes back to, you have to take care of your own temple first.
That's right.
You know? So thank you for everything. I do want to play a quick game with you. I know you have somewhere to be. So if you don't mind, what I would love to do is play a little rapid fire with you. I know you're a girl that loves games and fun stuff. I'm going to throw out a word that you mentioned during this conversation. I want you to come back with the first word that comes to mind. A little word association. We're working your cognitive abilities, Ande. Okay.
Tuned in and turned on. Ready.
Tuned in, turned on. Let's do it. Elder.
Vibrant.
Ageism.
Constraint.
Hustle.
Chillax.
Oh, that's a good one. It's not even a real word, but I love it. Currency. That will be a word in the dictionary one day, I think.
I go right to cash.
Okay. Purpose.
Ikigai.
Nap.
Rest.
Energy.
Life.
Renaissance.
Flow.
And this might be the first time I've ever said this. 67.
Andelicious. It's brilliant.
I love it.
It's brilliant.
That is so great. You're such a light. I love it. You are truly inspiring. And I've learned so much for you. You've shared a lot today that I'm going to put in the listen notes of this episode of HIListically Speaking, because there are books you tossed out. Obviously, your podcast, Don't Be Caged by Your Age, but a lot of resources that you share that I want folks to know about, whether you need them now or in 5 years or 10 years, because it can be very helpful for us living in a Renaissance way of life, right?
Right.
On that note, I would love to ask if there's anything you would like to leave with those tuning in.
I want to remind people you can do new things. New things, taking on something new, trying something new is the best gift for aging well, because it, first of all, it puts off any memory challenges for a good 5 years when you take on a new something, whatever that looks like. Could be flower arranging, painting, technology, dancing, whatever that looks like. Try new things. It's great for your brain. It's great for your heart. And who knows, you might find something that fuels your passion and could end up fueling your pocketbook.
Oh, I like that. Brilliant. Love that, Ande. Thank you so much for being here and just fueling that Renaissance fire.
Thank you so much for inviting me to join you for this delicious conversation, Hilary. You're a phenomenal host, and you always bring out the best in your guests. So thank you.
Takes one to know one. You can do new things. Wise words from Renaissance rock star Ande Lyon. We covered a lot of territory during this conversation, from Ande's podcast, Don't Be Caged by Your Age, to resources that you will find useful and make part of your life and make it the best part of your life. And listen, if you are not there yet, if you are 20s, 30s, 40s, even 50s, that is okay. You are never too young, you are never too old to make tomorrow the best day ever. And you'll find all of that in the listen notes of this podcast, including how to connect with Ande personally. And if this episode touched, moved, and inspired you in any way, or you know somebody that this might resonate with, pay it forward or leave a rating and review. Let me know how I'm doing over here. We are on all podcast platforms. We are on YouTube, and I would love to hear from you. You can also join me in the Hug It Out Collective on Facebook. It is a supportive, safe container to share. Plus, come to one of my Havening happy hours. They're free. We have them monthly. You will learn how to be a happy, healthy grown-up, be kind to your mind, and learn some new tools in the process that are neuroscience-based. HIListically Speaking is edited by Two Market Media, with music by Lipone Redding, and supported by you. So thank you so much for coming back time and time again, being part of the conversation and the connection. And as Ande shared, it is possible to forge new and unexpected pathways in your life. All it takes is that first step in the journey. And know that you are not alone when you're doing it. Because I love you, I believe in you, and I am sending you hugs every day. Be well.